You're listening to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. In this episode, we'll be listening to the session Black Female Entrepreneurship, Bookselling, and Literacy as Resistance, presented at Winter Institute 2020 in Baltimore.
Okay, so this panel is Black Female Entrepreneurship, Bookselling, and Literacy as Resistance. We just had an incredible town hall meeting just next door, and this feels like a continuation of that town hall, just talking about what's important in terms of growing our individuals' communities. And these three women have done an extraordinary job in their bookstores, all based in Washington, D.C. And so I think to make sure everyone knows, yes, DC, we can high five that. Is anyone else from the DC area in the room? Raise your hand, represent. I love it. Yes, please represent the area.
Chocolate City, take it down.
And so to open it up, we have an incredible slideshow that ABA created for us to show their work and the importance of the community building they're doing. So if I'm doing this right, boom, first slide down. All right. So we're going to start with Ramunda because we have these amazing photos from MahoganyBooks. And Ramunda, do you want to start with just telling us a little bit about the work you do at Mahogany?
Absolutely. So my name is Ramunda Young, and my husband and I started MahoganyBooks actually 12 years ago, in our little 2-bedroom apartment in Alexandria, Virginia. Mm-hmm. And we started online and built a huge following online. We did not have a brick and mortar at that time. So fast forward 10 years, 2 years ago, we opened up our physical store. So we kind of did it backwards. A lot of people have the physical store, and then however that process happens, they move to online. But we were online first. It was low overhead for us. It was an opportunity for us to reach lots of people with minimal cost. And so, we've done that for 10 years. And then we opened up our physical store in Anacostia, on Black Friday, Black entrepreneurs, Black business. It was intentional on that day for us to open it then. And, it's just been something that has been a passion of my husband's for years. People in DC may be familiar with Caribou Books. I worked at Caribou Books. He worked at Caribou Books, when I didn't even know he existed back then. We both worked there 2 different times, in our life. But, it was important for us to create a space that reflected who we were, and our intentions that focused on community, culture, and conversation. Mm-hmm. And so that's why MahoganyBooks was first started. We felt like there was a space that was needed to make Black books accessible. So I know we're kind of going to go into some of that, but that's just kind of an overview. It was important to us to create that. I call it like a sacred space, actually. When you walk into the store, you see pictures that reflect who we are and people we admire who are in the Black book industry. That was important for us, mm-hmm. and also for our customers to kind of see that imagery, to see who we are, who we could be, and who we were in past years as writers and authors.
And we're going through the slides slowly, but can you also talk about the region that it's located in?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So we're in Anacostia, in DC, a very historic part of DC, actually, and for a lot of different reasons. But one of the biggest reasons we're in Anacostia, when you look at the access to books, they did not have a bookstore. Actually, it's been about 20 years. And Baba Coates told me about Pyramid Books that was over there, I believe, too, even before us. So that was 20 years prior to us coming there, but it was important for us to be in that community. We could have been in any community in DC, but that community, not having access to books was something that was huge to us. Because if you cross over the line, there's bookstores everywhere in DC. But right. Why not this community who works hard, just as hard as everybody else, who have amazing kids, who have amazing families? They deserve that type of access to literature and books too. So that's why we chose Anacostia. I felt like Anacostia chose us. It was kind of this mutual thing. But that community, when you look at literacy and illiteracy, it was an opportunity for us to go there and make books, really accessible, printed books.
Awesome. And so next on the panel, we're going to be talking to Hannah, who is the owner of Loyalty Bookstore, which is a newer addition to the literary scene in DC, and actually, presented a little bit of a different model when you came into, your new location. So if you want to talk a little bit about Loyalty and why you decided to go into bookselling, in particular in the DC area.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Hannah Oliver Depp, owner of Loyalty Bookstores, and I was actually a career academic and a theater person, who, became a bookseller because I grew up going to a lot of the great bookstores in DC, including Caribou, which is, no longer with us, and also had family on one side of town and family on another side of town. And when I was with the other side of the family on the Tacoma Park side of town, I went to Politics and Prose a lot. I ended up being a bookseller there, and in the middle of my degree, realizing the effect that I was having on what books were getting shelved, what books were getting sold, what books I was learning about suddenly, what books I was getting to hand sell to people, and became incredibly interested in the process of bookselling, the process of independent retail, the very strange, odd, unique. I've worked retail since I was 14 years old. This is a weird retail. It is still retail. I'll cite you on that. But it is, the relationship we have with the publishers is incredibly unique, complicated, special, worth discussing at length. But the influence that I was able to have by talking to editors, book sales reps, publicists about books and what books were getting published and what books were getting sent on tour, what books were going to what neighborhoods, what they thought was a viable market, a whole other discussion, we will get to that, was incredible to me and changed my entire life trajectory. And I became a career bookseller. I started consulting to other bookstores while working full-time as a bookseller at Politics and Prose at Word Bookstores in Brooklyn and Jersey City. Incredible stores with incredible legacies all their own. But I was not satisfied with the trajectory of what I was able to accomplish, how I was able to work within my community and what I wanted to accomplish. And I also missed my home very, very badly. I wanted to go back to my family and friends in Silver Spring, Maryland, and Petworth, DC, where I had grown up. And Silver Spring is the fourth most diverse city in America. It is a huge immigrant city, which meant a lot to me. And they did not have books. They were readers. They were craving. They were hungry. They wanted books. They wanted a bookstore. And Petworth was about to lose a bookstore. And it had been, we have a lot to talk about with this, but it had been, it is a neighborhood that was gentrified aggressively, quickly, overwhelmingly. And I wanted to have a space for those, who had long been in that community and were new to that community and had a lot of questions about what role they were playing in gentrification, to have a place to come have a conversation. We partner, as you can see, we do a lot of books and booze at my store. And so we partner with the bar next door to us and a wine bar next door to us in our Silver Spring location and do books and booze, books and brunch. We really want to break down the barrier and any concept that the bookstore is a place that is not welcoming, that is not okay for me to go, that is snobby, that is does not welcome everyone. That's my approach to it.
It's wonderful. And so last but not least, I have a special story about Sankofa Books. And it's even hard for me to call you by your first name because I'm just like, Miss Gerima. I went to Howard University. I'm also local. I'm from Washington, D.C. And going to Sankofa was a rite of passage for every student at Howard University. And it still is. And so much of the work that these two women are doing are because of this work you've done and set the precedent in Washington, D.C. So I think that deserves a round of applause. You have 100% created a radical space for authors and readers to really understand the importance of Black literature and history. And if you could just tell us just a little bit about your origin story and why you guys decided to have that location there.
Thank you so much, First Glory, for that wonderful introduction. I hope that we can stand up to that kind of praise, really, because our reason for being there is to engender just those things. The beginning of Sankofa was in 1998. My husband and I were looking for a space to produce movies. And, we had been working in our basement. Then we finished a movie called Sankofa, and, we worked very hard for 2 years to distribute that movie ourselves, because even though it was popular, it was not getting a distribution contract. It was a movie that was showing Black people as, during slavery, who were capable of their own resistance, and calculations and, creating their own future. And that was not, viable material for distribution companies. So we did it ourselves with the help of the community, grassroots distribution. And because it was so popular, we said, okay, we need another place to work out of and also to make more movies out of. So we got a little spot across from Howard University where my husband was teaching at the time. I taught there for a couple of semesters. And it was perfect because, that was kind of a written off community except for Howard.
Yeah.
But it was perfect for us because it was our community. And like you said about Southeast. And it was across from Howard University, the Black Mecca.
Yes.
So, we started as a place to sell VHS tapes, rent VHS tapes. None of y'all remember that, I know.
98.
And the early way of showing those tapes was by rent. So you had these rental stores. We rented the tapes, and we said, okay, we're going to sell books too, because we want Black books, good Black literature, and good Black movies to be on the same shelf, so that viewers can say, look, movies need to be good too. We can expect more from our filmmakers. So, we began that. Now, at this point, we have more books than movies. We sell, I guess, maybe 10% DVDs. Most of them are ours.
Yeah.
So it's very few. And, we have partnered with a cafe that's come in, and the cafe is really on the same mission as ours because they've named their sandwiches after Black filmmakers from around the world.
That's awesome.
So you can go get an Oscar Michaud sandwich or Spike Lee sandwich. I guess we had to put Ava in there soon. And so the idea is that now we kind of have a place where we think, good Black literature films can be sold side by side, and we can even show them. We have a little screen, a few seats, and we can show movies there. Howard University students come, as you said, to mingle with each other, also to read the books, and also to see movies, to have open mics. They can have events on the porch in the summertime. We had something called Arts Under the Stars. So we could kind of go on. Are you sure?
Oh, you're right. I got so immersed. Sorry, let me go back. Okay. Here we go.
And so you can see on the porch, we have a little space.
Yep.
We can put a sound mic thing out there. Now with gentrification, it's a little more difficult because our newer neighbors don't like noise. One told us he walked over to our place one day and said, can you turn it down because I have a new baby that is being disturbed. I guess he was the only person. He felt like other people in the neighborhood didn't have little babies.
For years.
So anyway, no one has
ever had that.
Yeah.
Right.
We have a children's book fair once a year called Magical Mirrors Book Fair, and it brings a lot. We have partnerships here. That's a partnership example in the middle. I think one of our best assets is really to have partnerships. We even tried to have a gallery. I don't know how well that worked, but we'd like to, if somebody wants to curate, we have a beautiful little stairway for a gallery. We have, a Happy Nappy Storytelling Time on Sunday.
I love that.
And, one of our most best patrons, he's about this big. And so I could go on forever.
Yeah. I mean, I think what is so incredible about each one of you is it's not only the bookstore, but it's community driven. You have members of the community that are consistent and are ready to help in every aspect, whether that's crowdfunding or, attending a festival, attending a book club, buying books. That is an integral part of your business model. and your community model. And the first question I have for you is, can each of you share some of the invaluable traits of your existing community, aspects of community buildings that cannot be replicated online? Because I think there is this misconception that everything is done now on social media, but the reality is so much work goes into the work just simply in the bookstore.
Absolutely.
Would you like to say?
Yeah, I know for us, I worked at Barnes & Noble for about 6 years, and I worked at Howard University Bookstore for a few years. And so that allowed me to see what bookselling could look like and what it shouldn't look like, to be honest. So when we opened our store, again, we wanted to reflect our values and our sensibilities. And so being a physical space, it was important to us to control the sound that people heard when they walked in our store. It is important for us to control the smell that people smell when they come in our store and what they see. Those were all things that were important to us. And it's funny when people talk about, oh, it smells like love in our store. You can't replicate that online, that smell. I know we were profiled in Essence magazine once, and one of the questions the reporter kept asking was, what does that smell? We went all the way through your website and online. People kept remarking about the smell. And that again is something you can't replicate, but it was something that was important to us. We wanted it to feel like home when you walked in our store. We wanted people to feel like they were coming into contact with community, with people who were similar to them, who, where they could let their guards down and have those confidential conversations in a sacred space. And so online, you can't do all that. You can only do and curate so much online. And we have a great online following, but nothing beats when people walk across that threshold and they see those images or they see the artifacts that are from our home. When pieces that I got when we were married are on our shelves in our store. So we brought ourselves in there too. But when you talk about really quickly what a physical space does, I remember there was a gentleman, he was about 60 or so years old, in our bookstore. And he walked in and he stood at the threshold of our bookstore and he started crying, like tears. You could see him. So my husband walked up and was like, sir, what's going on? Is everything okay? And he looked around. He was really methodical and slow, but he looked up and he looked around at our store and he teared up and he said, I've never in my life seen this many Black books.
Wow.
And so when you're on our website, you see tons of Black books. But when you walk into a space where you feel heard, where you feel seen, that's what a space of a bookstore can create. I loved working at Barnes & Noble for 6 years, but I didn't get that feeling. I didn't. Maybe other people in the community got that feeling that didn't look like me, and that's great. But I had an opportunity to create that feeling for the community that I resonated most with. And so a physical store allows us to have those experiences and create that space where people feel like it's home, where they feel like it's love in that space.
My favorite thing is when someone walks in the space and I might be wrestling with books in the office or something and all the other ask the staff person, this is owned by a Black person, right?
Yes, right.
They just walk in, they're like, this is not what it feels like to walk in other bookstores. And I've heard that so many times. And it's just, it's curation. It's what our job is as booksellers from the jump, no matter what the model of your store is. They're going to see Black faces from the book covers. They're going to see Latinx faces from the book covers. They're going to see, I focus on a wide range of marginalized voices in my store. But the point is that I want every person who I had to wrestle to get seen other places. It's baked in from the jump. It is just how it is in my store. If you, are not from one of my communities and you are in my shelves, you must be the best frickin' book ever because you made it into the store. And, to be fair, the best frickin' books ever, are often from my community, from our community. And, it's not a compromise of, I think giving people the message that it's not a compromise of quality. It is in fact uplifting the quality that has already been there, and has been sidelined. And so people feel that when they walk in and people feel it. Some give voice to it. Some do not. And some people don't even know how to put words to it, but they feel it. I also filled the store with a lot of stuff from my house. That had nothing to do with how much we were scraping to get the bookstore together. But I will say that, no, I mean, it was really important to me that it feel welcoming and like home. There's a chaise lounge and a rocking chair in my store. There's places to sit. That is deeply important to me. I measure each square footage of how much money each square foot of my store needs to turn. And I gave up that space for people to sit.
Mm-hmm.
I needed them to know they could sit.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Would you like to?
I think that, having, I wish our online presence was better.
Mm-hmm.
Put it that way. I think that's an asset that Mahogany Books absolutely, does very well. And our online presence, should be, okay. Our online presence, is that better? Okay, sorry.
Sorry, y'all.
Should I repeat what I said the first time? The first question?
No, you good. You good.
We got it.
Keep going.
Okay. So, I think our online presence should be a lot better because there's a relationship between what we do in the store and what we want to get online.
Mm-hmm.
For example, we're going to have an event, with somebody in the store, an author, and we want to, talk about it online, and then we want to pump it up a little bit before when we're setting it up, and then we want to also have the book available to buy.
Right.
And then during the event, we want to maybe stream it or just send some pics. Are you here? Hope you're not missing this. And then after the event, we want to post pictures of the actual event.
Mm-hmm.
And then we want to have maybe that picture, go out in our newsletter or even put it in the store printed next to the book. If you missed it, don't miss this or something like that. So I think, there is a relationship between the two. We could not, the in-store presence is, so important. The atmosphere is so important. Walking in and seeing yourself on the shelves is so, so important. And I think we enhance that also by having our community relationships. This is a commercial.
It's a commercial.
Go for it. Let's see.
For my, a wonderful, academy, Black Studies Academy at Dunbar High School.
Mm.
We have a partnership with them.
Love it.
Because we want those students to think of books as a, non-negotiable part of their lives, that they should feel comfortable coming in a bookstore. They should, know that there are books there that reflect them, and they should be able to read, a book a month at least, if not more. The kids at this high school are having to learn this culture. I think the other thing that's real about Black bookstores and institutions in general is that we operate and are committed to a reality that has its own specific characteristics. I don't want to go over them now. I think, most of us know that we're dealing with a post-crack generation.
Mm-hmm.
Crack that we did not bring into our communities, that was imposed from a national level into the Black community to raise money for Nicaraguan Contras. The hell? How are you going to put those things together? We're still suffering from that. Gentrification is attacking us like crazy.
Right.
The targeting of young people by police is a total reality. So with those kinds of realities going on, high school kids thinking like, well, why? We could be killed tomorrow. And I'm not joking. This is how they operate. My daughter, she started this academy, and she told me about a kid she saw from her school walking across the street. High traffic street. And she was driving on the street and she saw him. He wasn't looking where he was going. And she caught him at school that day and said, what were you thinking when you walked out in the street? And he was like, oh, well, doesn't matter.
Wow.
Because he knows they go to funerals constantly in that school. She's worn out, from these kinds of losses at her school. So the partnership, some things, saying, yeah, there are ways we can, as a bookstore, not only, send books to prison,
right,
as mentioned earlier, but also have some concrete commitments to our community that says, okay, what can we do together? And so that commitment shows people know when you are part and parcel of that community. They when you get in trouble, they come to your rescue.
Right. And I think what you're talking about mainly is this idea of fostering a culture of literacy, presenting alternate histories of what is happening in the Black community, what is happening in communities of color and Latinx. It's like we need different alternatives. And each one of your bookstores is providing that. You're providing a different alternative for young people to see reflections of themselves.
Yes, especially on that. I'm sorry. I have two microphones. It's a dream. I think one of the things that's deeply important to me, and I think you see, is when you come in, I have all of my picture books spaced out. I don't spine any of them, because money, but also because, I want kids to see themselves, and I want to see themselves on a swing. I want to see themselves walking the street with their family, going to the market. I only got presented books with Black people or brown people on them as a kid, of them in strife and in terror. And I was like, I don't like these books. I was like, the only story I got told about Black people my entire childhood was about getting hitting with fire hoses or being slaves. Those were my options. That's not our options. That wasn't what I saw in my neighborhood. That wasn't what I saw in my family. That wasn't what I saw in DC. But those were the stories I was being told by books. Those are stories that need to be told, but that's not the only story we have to tell, right? So we want the variety. And when you see kids who do not have hope, they have not been told, reflected back to them from all sorts of media, but this is the media we have involvement in and control over. I also think I invite the internet into my store too, which also helps them document my store for me. So I am one woman, and I have incredible community partners with Bookstagram, and they have meetups in my store, so they get to see each other in real life, and I get to see those people, and the majority of those are women of color, and they are ignored also. So this is a chance for us to support each other, and it's a marketing exchange. They get cool photo ops in my store. I get to meet some of these great people, and they read and they help me curate my books. It's really important that the internet goes both ways.
And I think I just want to add to that. It's a real thing to us it's very intentional, I would say, to create these spaces this way, because there are studies after studies that show that kids who see themselves represented in books, it impacts their self-esteem and it impacts their self-confidence. So it's not just, let's have a bookstore because this is cool. It impacts their self-confidence and their self-esteem. I bet if any of you closed your eyes right now and you thought of Superman, for example, none of you would think of a brown colored Superman. It was not what you saw. It was not what you were raised on. I would be hard pressed to close my eyes and think of Superman as a brown colored person. Can you imagine? That's just one character, right? Superficial character. Can you imagine if there were characters after characters and images after images of your whole existence that looked like you? How empowering that would be. Well, my community didn't have those images. So as a bookstore owner, it is imperative that I create those spaces where those images are reflected. It's important. So it's not just, it's cool. We saving lives, right? And I say lives because of self-confidence and self-esteem, because as you were mentioning, Shirikiana, a lot of times we don't have hope, or we feel like, there's a lot of things stacked against us. And I'm not trying to make this a sob story, but it is a reality in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Different access that we have.
Of course.
But our spaces allow us to do that, and going to these schools and hosting panels or hosting authors at these schools, where a lot of times authors or the publishing houses may say, oh, no, not that school. The author calls us and say, yes, that school.
Yeah.
So those relationships are key for us. And those kids, when we go into those schools, to see a writer who looks like them, who sees a Superman or who sees a Glory, it's important for their self-esteem and their self-confidence. Too many stats show that. So,
and there's, this is a Black female. I know. This is also like Black female entrepreneurship. And I think the thing that we talk a lot in bookselling in general and amongst ourselves, the bottom line is these are, for-profit businesses as part of the element or as the main part of this too. I was told, I'm sure if you talk to, I was told that my community would not buy books. I know there's a lot of other people in this community who were told that they were not going to buy books. Watch them buy books. Watch them. And so there's also an imperative when you host when you host an event that is a sold out ticketed frickin' 100-seat event, I'm like cheering. Like, this is the best. that they will buy books.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we can handle selling books at those events.
Yes, absolutely.
I also want to bring this conversation into just the past a little bit. You know, in the 70s and the 80s, Black feminists as well as Black and lesbian activists found bookstores to be a weapon for fighting for recognition and rights, you know. So we talked about gentrification. We talked about just the political climate at the moment. How do you feel your ideology is reflected in your bookstores? Do you feel like it is an obvious thing that is just, as you said, on the bookshelves because you have the covers out and people are aware that you as Black women are representing a larger community? What do you feel your responsibility is? And this is a really large question. How can other stores, you know, have the same best practices? So it's not simply just about you doing the work, that other people can actually participate and support you in that.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot. Because we got a little bit of time left.
Let me just see if I can address some of it. One of the things that I think we should remember is that Black bookstores have been something that Black people have done forever.
Forever. Yes, exactly.
And so, you know, we've mentioned Caribou. Right here in Baltimore, there are some astounding institutions that everybody should know about. How many of you have heard of Black Classic Press? Hey. Okay. And so I want to just introduce Paul Coates, who's the founder of Black Classic Press. And one of the reasons that Sankofa is around, quite honestly, we get many of our books from Black Classic Press. How many of you have heard of African World Press?
Only recently.
Okay. They're here in Baltimore. African World Books.
Okay. we knew what you meant. We understood.
It's African World Press. But African World Books is right here in Baltimore. And the founder of that will be on the panel tomorrow. And so when we started Sankofa, I've shared this story with individuals since I've been here, but when we started Sankofa, we didn't know how to get books. We didn't have any capital for books. So we were, African World Books said, just come on, fill your car with what I have and you'll pay us after you sell them. So we did that for years. We just drove up from DC to African World Books, filed them in, sold them, paid them. And so that's why Sankofa is around. Third World Books, another Black publishing company. Dudley Randall's, publishing company, which is the name is
Broadside.
Broadside Press.
Yep.
You know, these are people who said, you know, we have to make sure that we always keep books in our people's hands. And those are the kinds of ways that I think keep people like us able to do what we do. And I feel very grateful to be on their shoulders and to continue to support them so they can continue to do what they do very well.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think the origin of Well-Read Black Girl is in that, to be politically aware and radical and supportive and make sure that people know that we are here and we exist and we're not going anywhere, you know? And I think in the climate, because of social media and so many other things, it can seem as if it's only for the optics, right, or it's only online. It only looks a certain way. But the reality is, I think, you know, saying the words well-read Black girl, it's a political statement, you know? And I think the work that we're doing does it reflect our ideologies in a really important and necessary way. And it doesn't have to be something that we hide behind. I think it's important to talk about and make sure that, you know, if you're a bookstore, you can be more than that. You can also be a cultural center.
Yes. And I think it's important. You had mentioned earlier the question of how are we cultivating that? And it's the conversations. It's the authors we're intentionally choosing. There's a lot of authors, I'm sure, that come to all three of us and say, hey, I want to be in your store. I want to do an event. And I'm very, very intentional about the people who we let come in and have a voice in our space. And I believe everybody has a space and a platform that they can do that. But for us, it's important who we have come in. And it's funny you say that about the optics. I think a lot of people say, oh, you guys, we work hard at our social media. We have about 30,000 on Instagram. We have about 10,000 on both Facebook pages and 7,000 on Twitter. Not that I know all those numbers, but
We don't look at those numbers.
I know, but I do the social media for us. So 60 and then about 14,000 on our email. So that's about 61,000 people. You talk about reading. We are reading. They are interested. They are seeking. So many people, every time I post on social media that you immediately see the ROI, in our PayPal or in our account or whatever, because we're speaking to that customer. Absolutely.
Yeah,
pre-orders. Yeah. Absolutely. But again, that space, when I talk about the authors and the conversations, when you talk about LGBTQ or all those different concerns of ours, having that space to talk about it, where a lot of times they may not have that platform. They know they can come to MahoganyBooks or Sankofa or Loyalty to have those conversations. It was funny. One of the customers came in our store when we first opened, because we're not too far from the White House. We know who's there. We're not going to go there right now. But our space, the conversations that we're having in our store, I was talking to a customer one day and she was whispering. And I said, ma'am, why are you whispering? And we were talking about slavery. We were talking about politics. And she looked around and she said, you know what? You're right. I'm at home. I don't have to whisper. So she, got a little crunk after that. But it's a space to have those conversations with whatever those different groups, that this is a space where we can be authentic, where we can be candid. And I'm not saying you can't have those conversations with other stores, but other stores, you're not whispering. You may be whispering, or you may be looking over your shoulder because you don't want to offend someone. And the thing is, having those conversations shouldn't offend anyone. It's reality, right? And so the other thing is we invite everybody into our store. Yes, we are targeted and focused and committed to the Black community. But man, I love when somebody else comes in, because these books are not just Black books for Black people. Are you kidding? These books are for everybody. This is American history, right?
Right.
A lot of times we don't see that. Yeah. I'm from Oklahoma, and I didn't get that exposure growing up to Black books. I grew up actually near Black Wall Street. My parents still live near Black Wall Street now. If you don't know about Black Wall Street, actually, how many people know about Black Wall Street? Let me see. Come on, bookstores. Booksellers love it.
Thank you.
But it was important, even though I lived very near Black Wall Street, and I didn't get that exposure to books like that. And so again, having those intentional spaces and conversations was important to when we opened up MahoganyBooks.
Also, just strictly on the political note, I think, how many times we say, like, we are supportive, we are collective, we are driven, we are not a monolith. And so what I'm talking about politically, what Sankofa's talking about politically, what Mahogany's talking about politically, we're open, we're welcome, we're creating these spaces. And you're going to find different books featured and focused on our shelves. As a result, we all have mission statements, right? First of all, every bookstore should have a mission statement. I don't know why you're working this hard for this little money unless you are having a mission. But I do think that, like, my mission is reflected on the books on my shelf, and feel it when you walk in, right? Each of us have that. Politics is intrinsically linked into my mission, and that's why I have the events and the conversations that I have. But also don't assume you always, people do assume they understand every Black person's politics as soon as they meet them.
Right.
Yeah. It's complicated.
Mm-hmm.
I want to continue with just again the legacies of DC, because I feel like you all represent a different legacy of DC, and I'm curious how your work and contributions will help redefine what Black businesses can be in DC, or what they should be. And because again, we've talked about this idea of the communities changing, especially with gentrification. How can we keep things in our favor and working for our community? Again, another big question.
Well, I think one thing, when gentrification sort of lays these lines to cross or not cross, meaning that the more you become threatened, the more people come to support you.
Mm-hmm.
So the Black population in DC is decreasing, and the feeling of being attacked and moved out and completely disregarded, creates a level of tension and frustration among anybody that's Black in DC. I shouldn't say anybody. I think there's a middle class buy-in also that we have to really say, admit. Gentrification does benefit a whole lot of the Black middle class. So, beyond that, the frustration is palatable. The number of homeless people is increasing. The amount of crime is increasing. So what does that mean for a Black institution? And I think in the case of Sankofa, it has meant that people come in the door and they say, oh, damn, you're still here. And cause you don't know from day to day. What business is going to be closed. We have, people that come from other cities to make sure they see Sankofa. And I think that's increasing because other cities are also threatened with gentrification. So gentrification doesn't just attack your physical presence. It attacks your culture. It attacks something that you have decided was you before and has physically been removed, from sound, music, to, design of the streets, anything that you think you established over the last, several, decades or generations. It's just up for grabs. So, for example, in DC, there's something called, don't mute DC, the hashtag. I've said that right?
Yeah, you said it.
So, the reason that came into being, don't mute DC, is because there were complaints about music, go-go music, and everybody here knows go-go is DC. It was created in DC, and it's an international phenomenon now, integrated in all kinds of other music forms. And so a corner where a Black business had been, playing go-go on a speaker outside. I mean, it was like a hallmark of that area. You go by there, you're going to hear really good go-go music. All of a sudden was a pain to somebody. And he was told to stop playing that music. Do you know how many people came on the streets?
Wow.
Yeah.
It was massive.
It was massive.
It was massive. And that, so it's on every level. Sound, sight, speech, walking, where you go. We have these things on the streets now called, I guess they're supposed to be historic markers, but I think of them as gray tombstones. And you get to write it. We have a wonderful thing up the street from us talking about this wonderful Black business of Now Valley. He's been there forever. Herbs, blah, blah, blah. He sells really good, great medicinal herbs and teas and everything. And he got to write his own plaque. How long is he going to be there? The plaques will be there when we're gone. So Sankofa then becomes a place where people want to defend.
Yeah.
And I think historically you will see that phenomenon of pushback. You see the strength in our community and our resistance alongside of the pressure, which is I think something that we have to remember as we go forward, because as hard as things get, you can get even stronger.
Yeah, I love that. Yes.
Those things go hand in hand, and we need to get stronger and stronger, harder and harder, faster and faster. And Sankofa also and these other stores provide the environment to remind you of that.
Yes, it's a living history.
You see the people on the shelves, and you can read the people on the shelves who have gone through stuff that will make what we're going through look like peanuts. And you can remember, I can do my part. And I can at least live up to my generation's challenges.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that deserves a round of applause. We're going to take a moment for questions. So Stephanie's going to come around with the mic. We can start with Noelle.
Hello. My name is Noelle Santos. I own the Lit Bar in the Bronx. Thank you. And, so Winter Institute is my favorite event of the year. And as you all witnessed in the town hall meeting, we're all like just airing out, giving thanks for what we have and then airing out the things that we can improve upon. ABA is doing an amazing job at addressing, a lot of the concerns that come up. However, when I go back home to my community, I still feel incredibly lonely because not only am I, discussing, not only am I facing, the perils of the industry. That was a bad word, but you know what I mean. The tightness of the industry with profit margins and all of that. I wish I had the luxury to deal with profit margins and my relationships with publishers. I'm dealing with, like the cultural issues. And also like being a high profile, Black bookstore that creates another, challenge. So I have one question and, a proposal. So my question is, I wanted to hear from you ladies on how you deal with like burnout or how you avoid burnout or bounce back from burnout, from all the pressures of, being squeezed by such a tough industry. And then on top of that, being all the extra responsibility of being a Black female entrepreneur. And then my proposal, I would like to propose like us having some support outside of these events throughout the year.
Absolutely.
Maybe it looks like a Facebook group, for Black bookstores. Something that, somewhere we have like a safe space to discuss the issues that specifically pertain to us. So again, like while ABA is doing a great job to address this, they don't have the insight. And, to really address these things. So I wanted to like propose like, maybe a couple of us get together to moderate it or whatever. And we have a forum where we take this discussion outside of Winter Institute, outside of our regional meetings.
Yeah. I agree. I actually started one, but I have not invited everybody to it. I think I've called everybody and said, hey, I want to start one, but I agree. And there's so much, we can talk offline about it, but there's so much that I think if we come together collectively, what we can do, we can, buy products at a totally different level. If a lot of us go in and buy certain things, there's a lot we can do. But the whole idea is community. We come from community. Black people came from tribes and villages, and it's our legacy. It's our history. So coming together, I think is important. So that's one thing. I think that's easy. All of us can moderate it. I don't mind. I can add everybody, to it. But I agree. But the other thing you were talking about burnout and, how do we keep going? I used to strive for balance. Oh, I'm going to bounce because I have a daughter. Her name is Mahogany. She's 14 going on 25 and, pray for us. Woo. She's amazing though. A huge reader. But it is a lot. I can't front. And I have a husband. We are in it to, neck and neck. So that's another benefit that I have. It's not just me. It's he and I, but still, the emails, it's overwhelming. And you talk about brand. A lot of people think about brand as your logo and your brand is your reputation. When you think of Target, you may think of that little circle, but you think of service or you think of cleanliness or you think of high fashion. That's their brand. What comes to mind when you think of them. So when people email me and I don't respond, I'm thinking that's my brand. When they think, oh man, every time I email MahoganyBooks, nobody gets back to me or it takes 3 or 4 days to get, that bothers, I'm a customer service fanatic. So that bothers me. But then I have to give myself grace. Noelle, give yourself grace. I don't stop crying because I get emotional. Yeah. We have to give ourselves grace. We can't be everything to everybody. We can't be everything to everybody because the work we're doing is serious. And every booksellers are doing amazing work across the board. But I have to give myself grace that, hey, this email can't get answered to today. It'll be tomorrow or the next day. And it's amazing that the community we have, the customers that we have, they give us grace. They give us passes sometimes, but it's so much. But, the balance, I don't seek balance anymore. I seek harmony. And harmony for me says, I may have tons of emails over here, but I need to go get a massage today. Or I may have to go buy a pair of shoes today. And I know the email box is on blast, right? Or the DMs. Even on our Instagram, I put up there no DMs. And I feel bad even having that up there. But it was so many. There's still out in there. But I had to step back and say, and my husband, it's important for us to have that type of connection even amongst ourselves. The business will, whether it stays or not, we'll be married. So I had to look for harmony and not, 50% here and 50% there, 50% in the store and 50% out. No, sometimes it's 80% in the store and 20% out, or vice versa. What is that harmony for me? So you have to find what that means for you, not accepting every speaking engagement. We don't, and I'm not saying you do, I'm not saying any of us do, but we have to say no and be okay with saying no. Be okay with not showing up or saying yes to certain things. But it's a struggle. I can't sit up and say I have all the answers, because I think of our brand and I think of what people come to know us for. And that bothers me. But then there's lots of emails that we get to, right? We have a great team of people working. But to cultivate a great team, everybody doesn't have to be full time at the bookstore. I have 5 people, and some people work 5 hours a week. Some work 10, some work 4. And everybody has their own piece there, that they contribute to the pie. But, I think grace has been me giving myself grace, forgiving myself that I don't get to every email, or we can't return every phone call back, or we can't answer every DM. It's really us forgiving ourselves. You can't. You, honey, spotlight on you now. Lip bar. It's a lot. It is a lot, but being okay with not being able to get to all of it. But try. I'm not saying just ignore it all. But I'm not saying that either, but we do try. But I know that sometimes just turning it all off, putting your out of office on your email and say, hey, taking your vacation, take 3 days off. It's important, or there will not be a lit bar. There won't be a loyalty. There won't be a Sankofa. There won't be a MahoganyBooks if we don't. So that's a long way of saying that's what I do. But
no, I mean, I feel you. Whew, I'm going to try not to cry too. I text you. So that's, no, I mean, I think there's a lot of people in the room who have a person who's also in this room, or maybe they're at another panel, but, we all have that within this community, within the bookselling community in general, but the pressure I feel the pressure on me. I cannot imagine the pressure you feel. We have communities on our shoulders. Mm-hmm. We have staff we want to pay. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. And we are our brand. And when we don't, we want to be on it for that brand, because that brand, let's face it, for me especially, my reputation as a bookseller is why I have a bookstore. My reputation on social media is why publishers were willing to take a chance on me. It is a thing. So, I do not have a third house I can mortgage. I've offered them my student loan debt and they don't seem interested. I'm figuring out how to do this. I'm building a new business model. I've been saying this can work, and I'm the trial balloon. So, it's a lot of pressure. And what I have found is to be honest about that, mm-hmm. which is I do not like, has been helping. And to be, as generous to myself as I would be to another bookstore that emailed me asking for help. Mm-hmm. Cause if any of y'all email me, I will answer you eventually. And I will share any resource that I have with you. Mm-hmm. And I realize that I should treat myself the same way that I would treat another bookstore asking for my help.
I just wanted to also, I think that they covered everything. I think your hours must be really crazy because you have such a great bookstore. I would just say delegate. When I can't do it anymore, I should say that our buyer is here. This is Jonathan Magister. And he might be sounding, when he goes home, he's probably saying the same thing. Just burned out. But having other people to burn out helps. So you can kind of share that burden.
Share the burnout.
Right. And having people that are committed. And I think we talked about this before. People who really love your work. Some of the people that, our IT guy, he's IT everything. He prints, he fixes the hard stuff. He does everything because he believes in this whole thing. Mm-hmm. And when I make money, he makes money. Mm-hmm. But he came on board because he's also training as a filmmaker. He's also a cinematographer. He's also, just by being around. Mm. So, he knows how to do the caulk and machine everything. So that kind of, growth space mm-hmm. is what we have to offer even more than the financial part.
Mm-hmm.
And so when people come in there they grow in their field, which is the bookstore field that we want them to grow in because they can do more and they can guide the store. And we really feel like we can turn our backs and say they'll cover that. That's not with everybody, but some of those key positions, like with the buyer, for example, I know he's in it because he loves it.
Mm-hmm.
That helps a lot. And I know you have people like that too, but I think, carrying the roles of buyer, HR,
Mm-hmm.
Floor manager, clerk, what else have I missed? Huh? Accounting.
Oh, accounting.
Mm-hmm.
Get me back so I don't lose my mind.
Right. And I think too, just to add to you were saying your team, it's important, the bookseller team, and I met your team there too, and a lot of teams here, but I know for Derek and I, it was important that, when we interviewed our booksellers, that I can teach anybody how to sell a book. I've been in the book industry, a lot of years. So I wasn't looking for somebody who could sell a book. I wasn't. I was looking for somebody who had shared values. The values that we have at MahoganyBooks, that's what I wanted that person to come through the door with. Like I said, I can teach my daughter how to sell a book. But somebody who is committed to culture, somebody who's committed to the work that we're doing, they'll stay open and stay longer hours, even when it's time for them to go, which helps us, which again gives us that grace, that opportunity to be a little bit more. But having the right people, there's a book called Good to Great, not a black book, Good to Great. I'm talking about the right people to have on the bus, right? And so for us, we had to find the right people to have on the bus. We've been open 2 years physically, and everybody we've had when we open are still there. So that we're not paying, millions of dollars at all, but they were committed to culture. They were committed in shared values that we had. So that can also help the staff too that you have.
We have one last question. Tamika, would you like to ask your question?
Yes. I'm going to keep it real brief. My name is Tamika. I'm from Book Soup. I'm the assistant store manager there, and I'm very grateful to be in this space. And grateful for all of you. I've gleaned, a lot from this conversation, and I'm excited to take it back with me to Los Angeles. One of my main questions has to do with some of the things that were touched on in conversation, sparking words like, I know you said you came from Barnes and Noble, and places where Black books are not really reflected. And if they are reflected, they're reflected specifically, as far as what that company wants to show as far as Black books are concerned. And then you mentioned, Black people not being a monolith. And one of the things, I did not grow up in a heavily there weren't a lot of Black people around me growing up. I've always been envious of all people who were living in DC, Chocolate City. Whenever I would go out there, I'd be like, yes, I'm here. I've made it. I've always been thirsty for community in that way because I did not grow up around it. And as a bookseller, it translated in a way that I was always emailing the buyers, talking about books that weren't on the shelves. We have conversations about where certain Black authors, should belong. Should it be in a Black study section or should it be integrated into, the main sections of the store? Why, when I walk into a store, do I only see, Black studies with a focus on politics and in connection to whiteness, and then urban fiction, which is leaves out so much in between, and that's basically them curating what they want the image of us to be. And then how to advocate for yourself, and as far as curation and the resources that you use to bring specific books. I haven't read everything, and I think when I start to advocate for Black people and Black books, they expect me to now give them this long list of things, and I haven't read everything. So just resources that you use when you're curating, and what would you give as advice to Black people who don't have the luxury of being surrounded by us, and still being a representation and being encouragement and hope to those people, because we do inhabit those pockets. We're everywhere. So, that's my question.
Yeah. Losing it over here. I feel you. Quick note. I was, Chocolate City, both of my parents, I was adopted, and both of my parents were white. I'm Bud from Grace and Frankie. So it's, thank you. So I also craved. I craved, and I found it actually in Black bookstores. And so, my therapist and my memoir are waiting somewhere else, but my point is that I came up in, friendly, sometimes armchair liberal, sometimes activist liberal, white spaces who siloed our stories instead of involving them organically into, to your point about Black history is American history, surprise. Then there's fundamental things in the way that we are featured and curated in stores. And, I would say, if you are dealing with managers, owners, buyers from levels of oblivion to hostility, whatever, remind them that our job is curation. Remind them that our job is that when someone walks into an independent bookstore, they should find a book that the internet did not tell them to buy necessarily. That is how we make sales. That is how we stay open. So this is just doing their job. And that you are not a monolith, and they don't know every single piece of whatever ethnicity they are part of history. So it is absurd for them to expect you to know all of it. And when you need resources, there is the AVA Committee on Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, if I got my own committee's name right. It does have a huge, humongous list of resources under education on BookWeb. And a lot of those are everything from book lists to people who have dedicated their lives and careers and academic careers to making these resources for us, and links to those things. Obviously we need diverse books, incredible resource, especially focused on children's literature. And then you can write any single bookstore up on this stage or in this room who will shout you our backlist. And then the other thing is, your sales reps, this is their job. We have a very special relationship with publishers. If the sections are not working, they are not inclusive, you tell each and every sales rep, each and every event grid that gets submitted, each and everything should come with a, hey, I need better, more inclusive, engrossing Black literature. Why is my romance section, Black people existed before yesterday? Why is the historical part of my romance section all, Victorian white ladies? Like what? There's some kick-ass Victorian white ladies. That's not the only story that existed in that time period, right? So this is a sales rep's job too. So utilizing all the parts of our book industry, so it is not all on you.
And I just wanted to add too, even the roundtables here, when you're meeting with publishers and things of that nature, speaking up, it's great when they hold up the book and I'm just waiting, is there a Black book in there, but I am, and maybe one pops up, but it's another opportunity to educate them and say, hey, whether you said you're a book soup, hey, what Black books do you have coming out? We would love that author to come to our store. Just speaking up, even in those spaces there. But then also, at your bookstore saying, hey, I read this book. Can we give it a shot? Even if they thought about never carrying that book, because there's so many, to say, can we try this book for 90 days? Can we track this? I'll track the sales. I just want to give this book a chance. So that could be some way too that you can kind of leverage, even though your bookstore may not be a Black bookstore, but you feel really connected and passionate about Black books. Just saying, hey, I would like to give this book a chance. Or, some of our booksellers, even though they're at a Black bookstore, they're in some authors' DMs on Instagram. So there's an opportunity for you too to bring some of those authors to your store that even though the owners may not be privy to, may not be aware of, but you are. We're following those authors. We're following some of those personalities, but you can reach out, and you may be doing this already, but it's an opportunity for you to give those authors space and voice in your store because you've connected and you've kind of bypassed some of the red tape that it may take to get them in your store. But you still can be empowered even though you're in that store. There's things that you can do too that say, hey, I'm out here fighting for the cause too, even though I'm not in a Black bookstore.
You have power as a bookseller. You have
absolutely
a ton of power as a bookseller. That is why we all stayed in this industry.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I could just say also, one of the things that happens when you have your own bookstore is that you get real happy about not having to beg white people anymore. Shall I say that louder? Y'all couldn't hear me. Okay, so you get real happy about not having to beg white people anymore, because the reality of America is that our presence here is fine as long as we keep begging. Meaning we're very acceptable in a begging mode to a larger system that doesn't feel threatened as long as we're begging. So as much independence as you can get while you're in this system should be attempted. So an independence model doesn't give you real power in a system where you are still subservient, by design, but at least you get a modicum of facilitation of your life. So if you're if you're in the music industry, or if you're in the film industry, or if you're in the book industry, finding a way to do what you think is right gives you a way of doing what you think is right without having to go to a middle person to convince them to change a lens that they have created since they were small, was created for them since they were small, and is being reinforced every day in their life. So why do they have to give you attention? Because they want to be nice that day? Maybe. Maybe they do see the reality, some of the reality of what you see. But you're going to bring to, when you're independent, you bring to it all those, your own lens, the one that you've formed over your lifetime, and a vision that nobody else can have but you. So you're very, capable young lady. I'm sure you could start one. I mean, it's easier than you think when you think of the battles that you have where you are in comparison.
Well, I think this has been an incredible session. Let's give the panelists another round of applause.
And I just want to say thank you to Glory also.
Absolutely.
What's our I'm reading your book now on audio.
Oh, thank you.
Not getting to it, but I'm just loving the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Really.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to Booked, the Bookstore Education Podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. Additional educational resources can always be found on the ABA website at www.bookweb.org. Happy reading!